All right, guys, for this walkthrough, create a new sketch. You guys are going to do stamp with functions. This is the agenda that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about functions with parameters, which we've already been using. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about that, see us use it in practice. We're going to talk about using push and pop more, but also adding translate to make it so that we can easily position our stuff. We're going to use the random function. We're going to use a couple event-based functions for the canvas, MousePressed, and KeyPressed, which we're going to talk about. Okay, so for this project, so the project that we're going to be doing is to create a stamp. So let's play around with the stamp first. I was going to do a Mickey Mouse stamp. So, draw Mickey stamp. Okay, so we'll just create this first. So let's talk about the Mickey stamp. Now, when we look at pictures of Mickey Mouse, you know, we have that circle and then 2 for the ears. And when we positioned, we were using the helper code, and that helped, but it also made it so that we weren't getting it exactly where the ears were positioned centered. So the translate function, it's similar to what we've heard about in math class. That was epic timing. That was my phone. That we can shift the stuff that we're drawing from a specific number horizontally, right or left, and we can shift it up or down. Okay. Now, what we've been doing is we've been drawing everything from the top left of our canvas. We can switch the origin by using the translate, which means that if we draw around that origin, it makes it a lot easier for us to predict where we're going to be putting those shapes, and then we can do a lot more with them. Okay, so this is where we want to make sure that we're using push and pop, because if you are translating and then translating on top of a translation, they add together. So here in the description, it gives an example of if we call translate 50, 0, and then we call translate again 20, 0, that's 50 plus 20. So we have shifted over 70 to the right. Okay, so this is where if you want to kind of control this, you want to use push and pop. So we're going to just start using push and pop for our Mickey stamp. Push, pop. And then inside here, we want to translate. So we're going to start translating, and for right now, we're going to translate to width divided by 2, height divided by 2. But ultimately, the stamp, what we want is that when we click the mouse, it is going to create the stamp where our current mouse position is. Okay, so we don't want it to be dynamic where it's trying to draw it with our mouse. We just want it to do it when we click the mouse. So we're going to make it event-based. Okay, so we translate. Let's start drawing these shapes. Now we know that all of them are going to end up having the same color. So let's give it a temporary variable. So let's just call it main color. So this is a local variable. It's just scoped inside this function. Main color. And let's just say that we have it black for right now. And we want no stroke. Okay, so now let's do a circle. Because we're not shifting the circle anywhere from that origin, this is the very center of our screen, we're just going to put 0, 0. We're not shifting to the left or right, we're not shifting up or down. And then we'll do 70 for a shape. And then let's just draw it here so we can see it happen. Mickey stamp. Okay. We got to fill it. Fill main color. All right. Let's go a little bit smaller. 50. There we go. Okay. And now we want to draw 2 circles for the ears. And we want them to be positioned equal amounts to the left and the right. Okay, So let's first do, we're going to do multi-cursor select. So I'm going to click, and then I can write two of them. So we'll just do 0 right now. We know that we're going to shift them both up the same amount. So let's do like -20 to go up, and how about we do 20 for our size. Maybe a little bit bigger. 30. That looks better. Okay, and then for our right and left, so this one will be our right one, this will be our left one. When we want to shift, we want to do the same amount. Okay, so if we shift left, that means we're going to be going negative, because we're going to the left from our origin, which is the very center. So I could put a negative value here, and then I could do the multi-cursor select here, and instead of us doing 0, let's try 10. That's not enough. Let's try 20. That's better. That looks pretty good. Okay. I think we could actually keep that. Maybe we do 25. And I think 20 was better. But we want it to be a little higher. So let's do 25. That looks more like it. Okay, so this is shifted from the center. We shifted it 20 to the right and 25 up. This one we shifted 20 to the left and 25 up, okay? That's why we like using translate, because this is very uniform, okay? And this is all off of one point, this one point. That means if I change this one point, watch what happens. Mouse X, mouse Y. Now it is moving, everything is staying in relation to my mouse position. This makes things a lot easier for us to be able to do a lot of stuff. If we have a character that's composed of a bunch of different shapes, we can make sure that it stays consistent as we move across the board, and we don't have to manually calculate for everything. So this saves us a lot of time. Okay, so we use a translate. We kind of understand how that's working. But now we want to actually do the stamp, not all the time. We want to do the stamp only when we click. So let's create a event-based function. So I'm going to go into reference, and I'm going to go to events, and we're going to look for when we press the mouse. So right here, mouse pressed, this is event-based. If I press the mouse, it does something, but it doesn't do it all the time. Okay, so we, instead of calling it here, we're going to call it event-based. So if I'm creating another function, just make sure when you guys are doing this that you minimize your current functions, and then you don't end up having errors of creating a function within a function. So let's do mouse pressed. Now, personally, I would say that it is better, your custom functions should always be the very bottom. Ones that are actually built into the library that you're using, setup, draw, your flow of the function should be first, and then the built-in ones should be the next ones that you see. So I like to drag mine so that they are underneath each other, like this. So setup runs first, then draw, and then I have MousePressed, which is library based, and then my custom functions. Okay, so inside this MousePressed, I want to draw the Mickey stamp. And if I run this, I'm clicking the mouse, I don't see anything, okay? And this is one of the reasons I don't have an error showing, okay? But I'm going to have to track the flow of my program. Okay, setup runs, draw runs. We need to make sure that MousePressed is running. So that's where I want to use console.log to help me out. So I'm going to say, mouse pressed. Okay, if that's running, then I should be able to click this and I should see it in my console, which I do. So I know it's running. So then I got to look actually at my flow of my program. This is event-based, but draw is happening all the time. And what are we doing in draw? We are redrawing that background. So I'm not seeing when I'm clicking this stamp because I'm drawing the background right on top of it. But if I move this background, so we could put it in a couple different places. We could have it where our program starts with the background, and now we have a stamp, and it's stamping on our canvas. Or we could move the background inside maybe where we draw the stamp, or inside of the MousePressed, but then you're going to start the program without a background, so that's kind of weird. So instead, we do have it now where it's stamping. Okay, this makes things easy, more convenient, but instead of us just doing it like this, we want to start actually adding some parameters into this function. So instead of us always doing it mouse X, mouse Y, we want to be able to pass in values. That way that if I wanted to enter a specific spot, I could. Okay, so I could do, and we've been using parameters for a while. Circle, when I draw a circle, I know that the first one, these are all requirements that I have to draw a circle. If I have more than it or less than it, I enter error out. So if I have an X and a Y and a diameter, okay, for this function, this draw Mickey stamp, we are going to create our own parameters. We want an X and we want a Y. And that's going to be the point that we are going to use to translate. So we're going to say X and Y. Okay. Now, when I try to press on the mouse function, I should be getting an error. Okay. It says sketch line 26, translate was expecting a number, didn't receive anything. And I do still see my image showing up in the top corner, but why is that? Well, when we are calling this draw Mickey stamp, we didn't give it anything, so it doesn't have any values to hold for this translate. Okay, so these are the requirements. They're the parameters of a function. So they're like placeholders. In essence, they are local variables that become scoped only to this function. So we are declaring them here, X and Y, and we can use them anywhere we want, but they will only exist inside here. The problem is we didn't actually give any values for X to be or for Y to be. So in this case, if I wanted X to be something, I could say, I can actually put, 150, 200, and then when I click on the mouse, that's what the X and that Y becomes here. I can also do, if I wanted to pull whatever that current value is for mouse X and mouse Y, I can do that. And now we get that same functionality, but it is also way more readable. Instead of wondering how the stamps were going in a different place, I can now see that I'm drawing the Mickey stamp and it requires an X and a Y. Okay, so this is a way that I can better create my code so that if other people are coming behind me and they're looking, they're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. You just have to have an X and a Y instead of trying to guess. Also, this makes it so that this function is basically independent. I can do other stuff with this function and I'm not really changing how I'm calling it. As long as I give it an X and a Y, everything just runs. So we're going to make a couple changes in this one. We need to do the translate function, which we did. We had the function with parameters, which we did. We are now going to do the random function. Okay, so when I look at the random function, random is a really awesome function for us to kind of give, make things different, variability on our code. Okay, now there's 3 ways that we can, well, technically 4 ways. We could provide a list of things and it will select one of those items from the list. So maybe I have a list of responses or actions or something to that effect, and it will randomly select one of those from that list. I can also give it other parameters. I can give it values. I could give it 0, 1, or 2 arguments. If I give it 0 arguments, it's going to give me a value between 0 and 1. This is a big decimal, so anything from 0 up to 0.9999999, okay? It does not include that last number, it just goes up to it, okay? If I give it one argument, it's going to go from 0 to that number, but not include that number. So if my number that I was going up to was 20, it'd go 19.999999. If I give two numbers, then it'll be a range between those two, including the first number, but not the second. So it will always include the min. It will not include the max, but it'll go all the way up to it. Okay, so this is how I can set it up. And when I'm looking at my syntax, that's why I see these showing up as optional, because I can define one, none, or two. Okay, so in this case, what I want is I want to randomly do colors for the Mickey Mouse one. So each time I click and stamp, I want it to stamp a different color. Okay, so let's go to the Mickey Mouse stamp. We have this main color here that we are filling out. Okay, now colors are all made by red, green, and blue channels. So let's build those first. We're going to say let R, and then we got let G, and we got let B. Okay, those are all colors that we want to do. So we give it a value. Now let's use the random in this one. Okay, color channels go from 0 to 255. They cannot ever be more than that. Okay, so I do want to do this. So this is a piece of code that I want for all the channels. Random 255. Okay, now my main color, I can say, you know what it's composed of? It's composed of R, G, B. Okay, these three values, they can be random up to 255, but not greater, for the red, the green, and the blue channels. Okay, now every time this Draw Mickey stamp is created, it needs an X and a Y, and then it will randomly select these and put it as a color. So now let's see it. Now we have different colors every time we hit the stamp. Okay, so now we have done that with MousePressed. MousePressed was tracking, it's actually doing the spot where we're doing the Draw Mickey stamp by capturing that mouse X and mouse Y. Let's create a reset. So when we press the Enter key, it will reset the canvas so that I can restamp it. Okay, because right now, if I click play again, I could, kind of draw stuff. Each time I click, but I can't clear it out. So let's look at that. Let's look at the KeyPressed. Again, we know that this is event-based. Let's look. Now we have keyboard, so we're going to look at KeyPressed. That's a function that we have. KeyPressed is basically set up where inside of it, it's going to do something. You have to check for stuff. So if we want to check if a key is pressed, we have to write that. Okay? And if we see up here, we're checking if the key code, and the key code is holding whatever the current value is of any key that is pressed, the last key that is pressed. Okay, so if I click on here, I can see the key code reference, and on here I can see an example. I can hit the up or down arrow and it's going white to black. Okay, and that's getting called in here. This is called a conditional. Okay, conditional is written with the keyword if, and then it builds it up that I'm asking something that's going to be true or false. I set up a code block. If it's true, I'm going to execute what's inside the code block. Okay. This has another part, which is called an else if, that it will execute this. It's going to check this if that if is not true. So we will actually get involved in this a little bit more. We need to kind of look at the key code though. So this next one, if I press the left key, I can see two things. And if we look here, we see the key and we see the key code. On the left is the key On the right is the key code. Key code is an ASCII value. It's going to be a specific number. Okay, and in here, keycode.info, if I click on that, it actually brings me to a web page. And on here, I can click values. So A, that's the key, but the key code is 65. S, 83. D, 68. B, 66. So look, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, now if I do a capital A, that's different. In ASCII values. Okay, so we can have all these. Space bar is a specific value. The enter key is a specific value. And here we see the key, and then here we see the key code. Okay, so now let's play around with that. We're going to use the key to get it. So let's look at our reference again for key code, because they have specific values. These are special keys for P5.js. So if we press the enter, see how it's written all in capital. It says the variable key code is used to detect special keys such as enter. So that's what we want to enter. We're going to type key code and then check if it equals that enter. Okay. So let's actually, when we press that, let's see what enter is, because they had it written all in caps. I think that's going to give us some information. So I press, that says 13. This enter right here, when I type it in caps, it says 13. Let's go to that key code info again, and let's type enter. 13, that's what it's checking for. Okay, so we want to check if we are pressing the enter key. If we are, then we want to redraw the background. So I'm going to make sure that I'm minimizing my function so I'm not going to mess anything up. I want to add another function. So outside of any function, I'm going to write the KeyPressed function. Okay, inside here we are going to build a conditional. Okay, we want it to only draw a background if I press the enter key. So I'm going to write if, and then I'm looking for key code, if that 1, 2, 3. That's me checking for equals. If that equals the enter, then I want to redraw the background. So I'm going to say background 220. Okay, so in here, key pressed will check whenever a key is pressed. Okay, so if I'm doing console.log in here, I should see, let's see, key code. So in here, I just press S, J, K, L, A, M. Okay, so this is giving us some commands. So now what we want to do, let's go ahead and start pressing keys. We are clicking and putting a bunch of stuff. Now we're going to hit enter, and that didn't happen. It's looking for it 2 times. There we go. I think I was hitting the wrong button. Okay, so when I put a bunch of stuff on here, I press the enter key. And now it disappears. It clears it out. Okay, that is everything that we're going to cover in this one. We covered functions with parameters using push and pop with translate. We covered random to give us variability in our program. And then we did 2 event-based functions, MousePressed and KeyPressed. All right, good luck. Have fun.